the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube. Just off as we continue Maseches Gittin Daf Mem Zayin. This is basically the last year from the first half of the art school series of Maseches Gittin. There's two parts. This is the first volume. The second volume will be starting tomorrow. If you're using art scroll, which I'm sure you are. Nothing wrong with using art scroll. And the Mishnah says on Mem Vav Beis, on the bottom, you sell yourself and your children to non-Jewish people. In Podin also, you don't redeem it, right? Obviously, you pocket some money when you sell it to non-Jews as slaves. Then normally we talk about pidyon shvuyim, right? You redeem people from non-Jewish people. Here you don't. They sell themselves. So Podin is a bottom and after the father dies, he's no longer able to protect his children. And like the Gemara is going to explain, they assimilate, so then we do force the tzibur to redeem the children. So the Gemara says, Amar Ravasi. Ravasi says, Who shamachar v'shana v'shilish. It's not that he sold himself once. He had to sell them twice and three times. Once he sold them three times, the third time, we no longer redeem him and his sons, because obviously it's a sign that he'll continue doing it. If he did it one time, we're not for sure that he's going to do it again. But if he keeps on habitually doing it, then we're not going to redeem him. Hanu b'nei bei Michsi. There were certain people from the town of Michsi. The Yasvi Zuzim of the they borrowed money from non-Jewish people. They didn't have any money to pay back. The they couldn't collect money, so they took them as slaves. They came from Rav Huna. They wanted to be redeemed by the Jewish people, by the community. He said, "What can I do for you?" The son of Mocher's asthma was one of those common imposing also. You don't redeem them. Amrle Rabbi Abban, Limatani Rabbeinu Husha Machar v'Shana v'Shilish. Right? He said this is the equivalent of selling. You let borrowed money. You knew you weren't going to be able to pay it back. They're going to take you. But he said that's only if you do it three times. Amrle Hani Mergel Regili de Avdi Hachi. He said no. In this case, people they did this. They borrowed money and defaulted many times, at least three times. A certain man sold himself ludai. Now ludai apparently were known as cannibals. He came from Rami. Pirkon. He said we should redeem them. Rami said the halacha is we should redeem them. So he said back to him. The questioner said back to him. Top of Mem Zayin and all. Amarle Tanan. Hamokar Atzma is one of the Chavin Podin also. Sorry. 1 second. Amarle Pirkon. And he proved that Amarle Tana Mocher Asma was born of the other Chavin and Podin himself. Podin is born Mishnah Kula V'Kol Shekin Hachad Igal Ketala. He says the Mishnah says that you don't redeem the father, but you would redeem the children after the father dies. The reason is that after the father dies, he's no longer able to protect his children. He can't have an influence on his children. His children are going to marry non-Jewish women. Certainly over here, they're going to die. We're more worried. We're redeem them. When we have these halachas of Poda Shvuyim, right, it's talking about people that are observant Jews, people that keep the Torah. Or at least if they knew what the Torah was, they would keep it. This is a Yisrael. He knew what the Torah was, and he rejected the Torah. He's rebelling against the Torah. He's not keeping the Torah. The kachazal the kachal nevelas and treifos. I saw him eating nevelas and treifos. Torah forbids. So Amar Lahu, he said to them, "Emel leteavon the kachal." Maybe it's not a mummer, right? There's two types of mummer. There's a mummer leteavon and a mummer lahachas. The Gemara Masechah Sanhedrin. The mummer lahachas is when you know what you're doing is wrong. You're doing it to anger God. You're not doing it because you like a cheeseburger. If you like cheeseburger, it's not really your fault. You're not rebelling against God. Amrullah said back to him, they have kosher meat and they have non-kosher meat. Everyone knows kosher meat is probably better quality than non-kosher meat. Nonetheless, you would eat the non-kosher meat. Basically, you've proved to me that you don't have to redeem these people. Why have you proved that? Because he's momer lahachis, and he's lost his din of Yisrael. He's not osa ma'isa amcha. There's a mitzvah to treat people who act the way of the nation. If they don't act the way of the nation, they can throw off the yoke of being a Jew. So they're not included in the mitzvah of Pidyon Shvoyim. Rish Lakish, apparently before he became a Talmid Chacham, he wanted to wipe out the cannibals. It was like he was a part of a gang. The cannibals were a different gang. So he sold himself to the Ludais. He took a bag, an empty bag, and it looked like there was nothing in there, but there was actually a stone in there, a stone. Amri Gemiri, the Yomi Basra, called it Boy Minayo Avdi. Right? There's a last wish before they kill you and eat you. They give you a last wish. Avdi, like, the reason they do this, because they feel guilty about killing him. So therefore they give you a last wish. Yom Basra, the day he's about before he's about to die, Amrulay, my nichalach, what do you want? Amrulu Baina, Akmatinchu Vosvinachu, Vakol Chaminaichu, Amche Chaito Palga. He said, I want you to sit, I'll tie you up. And each of you, I'll hit you, right, 1.5 times with my bag, which to them was empty. Kamtino Vosvino, he tied them up and he set them in front of the trees in front of him. Kol Chad Minayo, Kad Mache, Chad Chaita, Nafik Nishmase. Now he said he was going to hit them 1.5 times. He hit them 1 time. And basically they were almost dead. Nafik Nishmase, the neshama left, but their nefesh was still there. Charkine Lishine. And when he did this, their mouths like deformed. You know, they were pretty much like, I guess, brain dead. It looked like they were frowning or smiling. So he said, you're laughing at me? I get to hit you a half another time. He ended up killing all of them with that half-second hit. Right? They had a lot of bounty. They had a lot of stuff that spoils that he took from them. And Rish Lakish used to eat and drink a lot. Amrale Barte, he's always said to him, enjoy yourself fully. Get a nice bed, nice mattress. Do it in a respectful way. Enjoy yourself, but use proper etiquette. I'm really beat the creasy curry. I don't need to buy that. I don't need to waste my money on those things. I sleep on my belly. My belly, he was overweight. When he ended up dying, he left over a significant amount of money. Kava the Morika. Kava is 24 eggs worth of Morika, which is saffron. Saffron is really expensive. You know, saffron, for a kilo of saffron could cost you, I don't know, $5,000-$10,000. And a kilo, how many eggs? I don't know. He left over a significant sum of money. He didn't listen to his daughter. He should have enjoyed himself more. Got a mattress. Now, if you look in ArtScroll, they translate this differently. They say that he didn't leave over. He left over a very small amount, and he was upset that he left a small amount over. And the Gemara is mashma like that, right? He didn't buy the bed, right? Kavod Mariko is saffron, which is very expensive. So, also the pasuk Azvul Acherim Chelam, he left over a significant amount. I don't think it's like ArtScroll. That's why I don't know like ArtScroll. Which is a mocher sadeo lovid kochavim. Someone sells his field to a non-Jew. The Rabbanan acted a takana that even though you sold your field in Eretz Israel to non-Jewish people, right? We'll discuss whether there's a chiyuv midaraisa of bikurim or not. But the Rabbanan masakin, you have to buy those bikurim off of the non-Jew and bring them as bikurim to the Beis Hamikdash. The Gemara says, "I'm a rabbi. Even though when a non-Jewish person buys a tract of land in Eretz Israel, it's still chayav in Trumas and Maisros. The land is chayav in Trumas and Maisros because he bought it, right? It doesn't remove the chayav in Trumas and Maisros. Shenemar kili haaretz, li kedusha haaretz. Hashem says in the pasuk, the land belongs to me. Kedusha haaretz belongs to me. Yes, king lo v'kilchavim Eretz Yisrael lachor baruch shichamar. If they do buy land, they have the rights to work the land, to build it into wells, and shichin are basically ditches, umaros, or caves. They have the right to the land. They don't have the right halachically to the land, but they do have the right to the land. We'll explain this shita and the following shita in Iyos Ben Sion. That's Rabba's opinion. Shemayim belongs to Hashem, but the land he gave to people. He says the exact opposite. Even though technically a non-Jew buys land, it's not chayv and shumas ha'maisros anymore. Remember the gancha, Velo dagan oved kochavim. It says on your dagan, on your produce, there's a chi of Shumas and Maisros, but not the produce of non-Jews in Eretz Yisrael. So even if they buy land, they don't have the right to do whatever they want to the land. They can't build wells and make ditches and make cisterns and make caves. They can't do it. Shem Hashem Haaretz. Says the land belongs to Hashem. Michael Mifli. What's Machlokes Rabba and Rabbi Lazar? Marshav about the Gancha, Velo Dagan Oved Kochavim. Lazar holds right the Gancha, your grain, not Dagan Oved Kochavim. So you see what? That if the Oved Kochavim buys the land, then there's no chiyuv insurance. They own the land. So Marsavar, the Pshat and the Pasuk like Rabba. What does he do with the Pasuk? Diguncha v'lo digun Oved Kochavim. It has nothing to do with ownership of the land. It's always chayav insurance of Ma'asos according to Rabba. They can't remove the status of Shumas of Ma'asos, but the Gemara Malacha. When is something we chayav insurance of Ma'asos? When you do the Gemara Malacha, for example, a pile of grain, when you smooth out the pile. So it has to be done through a Jew. If it was smoothed out through a non-Jew, that's not considered a Gemara Malacha. And therefore, it's not chayav in shumos and ma'asos yet. It's not tevel yet until the Jew comes and works the pile. A different halacha about shumos and ma'asos. I'm a rabbi. I'm not minallah. How do you know I'm telling you the truth? Right? That the land that a non-Jew's purchase of Eretz Yisrael does not mafkia midei shumos and ma'asos. It's not halakad v'shicha v'peya shel oved kochavim chayavim ma'aser. If a non-Jewish person somehow is leked shicha, peya leked is when you're gathering the produce, it falls down. Shicha, you forget some. Peya, there's a corner you're supposed to leave over. It's chayav in shvos ma'asos, unless the owner was mafkir. The owner said his owner was heichidami. What is this Mishnah talking about? Yilayim of Israel, the field belongs to a Jew. Gittin oved kochavim. Oved kochavim is taking from the field. Elim can't hifkir. Why does the Mishnah say that unless the owner was mafkir, hamifkari v'kaimi? Right? If it was, right, originally belonged to a Jew, and he sold it to a non-Jew, right? He sold it to a non-Jew, right, it's considered hefker. So why does the owner have to make it hefker? I'm sorry. Let's go backwards. If it belonged to a Jew, and the person who took from the field leked shechapeh was a non-Jew, so leked shechapeh are hefker. They're pater in shmos hamayos. You don't have to be mafker them. Alav the oved kochavim must be belong to a non-Jew. But like Yisrael, Yisrael is picking it up. The leked shechapeh. Time with the hefker. It's only because the owner was mafker. Halo hefker chayiv. You see, like Rabba says, that's chayiv in shmos hamayos. Just because a non-Jew buys land in Israel, it's still chayiv in shmos hamayos. The Olam to Yisrael. The Gemara defends the Rebbe Lazar's position. The Olam to Yisrael. Really, this bishop's talking belongs to Yisrael. The Oved Kochavim picks it. But the comment is Ha Mifkari Kaimi. Right? It belongs to a Jew. So Leked Shechapeh are Pater and Shumas Ma'asos. He did Mifkari. I died to Yisrael. I died to Oved Kochavim in Mifkari. Right? He was only Mafkir. It's only Mafkir. Leked Shechapeh only applies, right, when it's taken by a Jew. When it's taken by a non-Jew, so then Shumas Ma'asos do apply. So that's why he needs to be mafkir. Tashma Yisrael shalakach sada me'oved kochavim. Yisrael buys a field from oved kochavim. Ad shalo hivia shlish, before the grain grows to a third of its growth. That's the threshold of starting to grow. And then he sold it back to him. The non-Jew, once it developed a shlish, the plants developed a shlish. Chayav is a meiser. Shekvarn is chayva, right? Because in whose hands did it become chayav and shumas? In Yisrael's hands, right? Only if it was under the ownership of Yisrael, when it reached a third of its growth, is chayav and shumas. So you see, a non-Jew is not chayav and shumas, right? Like Rabba says. I'm sorry, like Rabbi Lazar says, that it's not chayav and shumas. So the Gemara says, this Brisa is talking about Syria. David conquered Syria at some point in Jewish history, but it was on his own discretion. It wasn't a war of all of Klal Yisrael, and therefore it's machlokas in the Gemara about Zara. Does that make it part of Eretz Yisrael or not? And this Brisa held it does not make it part of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore it's Syria. It's really only midrabanan. We treat it like Eretz Yisrael. That's why, really, Middle Rice, we'd say like Rab that has Kedusha Eretz Yisrael, but it's Syria. It's not really part of Eretz Yisrael. So therefore, it depends only when the Yisrael has it, then it's Chayav and Shumas and Maestros. It reached a shlish in the hands of a Yisrael. But if it was really part of Eretz Yisrael Middle Rice, so then even if it wasn't in the hands of a Jew, it was the hands of a non-Jew, it would be Chayav and Shumas and Maestros. Tashma, another proof through Elazar. Yisrael v'Oikachavim. Yisrael and non-Jewish, they bought a field in a partnership together, on top of Mem Zayin and Beis. Tevel v'chul and Murab and Zebazeh. Divrei Rabbi. Rabbi says, right, the produce that belongs to the Jew is Chayav and Shumas and Maestros. Produce that belongs to the non-Jew is chulin. There's no din of Shumas and Maestros. So it's mixed together. And we have a problem. Right? They obviously are a partnership. They split it into half. Whatever belongs to the Jew is chayav. What's non-Jew is not. Adkan lo pligel the marsha v'yish breira marsha v'rein breira. Right? The machlokas is Shimon Lil holds there's breira. We can assume the part that the Jewish person owns really belongs to him, and the part that the non-Jew takes for himself belongs to him. And Rabbi holds no, we don't hold of breira. Since we don't hold of breira, so therefore they're mixed together. You're stuck. Avadukuli alma. Everyone holds. Both Rabbi and Shimon Lil hold. Yesh kinyan lo v'kocham v'Eretz Yisrael afkiyah midei ma'aser. Right? At least the non-Jewish portion is not chayav and shumas and maestros, like Rabbi Elazar says. So when we're talking about Besuria, this price is also about Suria, because Savar Kibush Yachalish, Kibush holds that conquering by Yachid, by David and Melech is not considered Kibush, and therefore the halacha is different over here. Amar of Chia Bar Avin brings another proof for Elazar. Tashma Mocher Sadeo Lo V'Kochavim, from Mishnah. He sells his field to a non-Jew, Lokeach or maybe Bikurim. We force the person who sold it to buy back the Bikurim and bring it to Yerushalayim. They Tikkun Olam, they Tikkun Olam in. Right, because of Tikkun Olam, we'll discuss Tikkun Olam soon. What is Tikkun Olam? They Tikkun Olam, yes. Midoraisa lo. Midoraisa, it's not Chayav and Shumas and Maestros. Right, you see, once a non-Jew purchases it, it loses Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. It loses Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. There's no Chiyuv Bikurim. Rashi defends Rabba's position, who incidentally we hold like La'alacha. There were two takanas. Mikara havu ma'asim midoraisa. Really, even a non-Jew owns it. It has Kedushas Eretz Yisrael. It's Chayav and Bikurim. Kevin the Chazu. To come Mikri and Mizapni, people were started selling the land to earn money from non-Jews. We don't want people to sell land of Eretz Yisrael to non-Jews. It's actually Israel Raisa. And you're not supposed to show favor to them. Don't give them chaniya. Don't give them space in Eretz Yisrael. To Savri B'Ktushasayu Kaima, the reason they rationalize that it's okay to sell it because it retains its kedusha. It retains its kedusha, like Rabbah says. And we'll bring Bikurim. Dakino lehud lo laisus. They're masakin that people should think that it does lose its kedusha, that you shouldn't bring Bikurim. So people should stop from selling, because otherwise they're ruining the mitzvah of Bikurim. Kevin the chazu the mandalo sagile mazmet the kamishtakam biyad of Bikurim. And since they saw people nonetheless persisted in selling to non-Jews if they needed money, Hadar dakino lehud the laisus, and they're masakin, then they should bring. But really, the right that's chayiv and shumas and ma'isra, and it's chayiv and Bikurim, like Rabbah says. It's maramocher sadeo lepeiros. Let's say someone sells his field for peiros, meaning I'm not skilling you my entire field, but basically whatever fruits grow in the orchard, you can take. Rabbi Yochanan Amar maybe v'koreh. The person who purchased those fruits, let's say for a year, for 2 years, so the first fruits he takes and he brings to Yerushalayim as bikurim, and he reads the parsha of bikurim. Reish Lakish Amar maybe ve'eno koreh. Reish Lakish says it's not so clear. He brings, but he doesn't read the pasuk because the Rai says it's not chayiv. We'll see the machlokes in a second. Yochanan maybe a koreh kinyan peros kinyan aguf dami. Owning the fruits is actually like owning part of the land, right? The mitzvah of Bikurim is on the owner of the land, the Eretz Yisrael. The maybe in a koreh kinyan peros lav kinyan aguf dami. He holds owning the peros is not like owning the actual land itself. Asi Rabbi Yochanan Reish Lakish. Yochanan asked the question Reish Lakish ula beischa. Pasuk by Bikurim says ula beischa for your house. Malami shada maybe bikurei ishto the koreh. If a person brings bikurim of his wife, right? When a wife enters the marriage, she can bring certain assets into the marriage, and the husband gets ownership over them. Nechsei muluk, nechsei barzal, nechsei muluk. He gets to eat the peros, but he doesn't own the land, even when he's married. So, the Gemara says, well, the Beischa teaches us that a person brings bikurim from the property of his wife, a koreh. So you see, kinyan peros is like kinyan aguf dami. He must own it. I'm really shiny hasam. Reish Lakish responds, "Shani hasam dechsiv ul beischa." Really, you're like kinyan peros lap kinyan guf dami. The Torah goes out of its way to tell you, even in this case, the Korei Ishto, you still bring bikurim, even though really technically you shouldn't. Because the Amri, some say it a different way. Isiv Rishon Malakish Rabbi Yochanan. Rishon Malakish asked Rabbi Yochanan, Ulebeischa, Malamish maybe Bikorei Ishto. It says in the Torah that you bring bikurim from your wife's property. Since the Torah went out of its way to say, there, the kinyan peros is kinyan gufdam, but otherwise it's not. Right. Amar le, so Rabbi Yochanan responded, "Time b'didi nami mahacha kamina." No, I learned from this possible base to teach you the kinyan peros kinyan gufdami, just like it is by a wife. It is by any time kinyan peros is like kinyan gufdami. Asive Brisa, a question. He's coming on the way to Yerushalayim. He's holding the bikurim of his wife's property. You heard his wife dies. Maybe the Koreh. He brings and he reads the parsha. Mesa in lo Mesa lo is only because she died. If she wouldn't have died, you wouldn't have brought it. Why? Because kinyan peros is lav kinyan guf. And when she dies, you inherit it from her. You own the kinyan guf. So the Gemara says, "Who did afagab lo Mesa?" The same halacha would apply even if she didn't die. Mesa, why does it say Mesa? Mesa is tzricha. The chiddush is that she died. We should make a gzeira that he shouldn't read because of Rabbi Yosef Chanina says, "Amar Yosef Chanina, batran v'shigram b'yad shliach u'meis shliach b'derech maybe ve'ino koresh nemar l'kachta v'veisa ad she l'kicha ava be'echad kamash malan." Rabbi Yosef Chanina says a halacha about bikurim that if I own a field and I take the bikurim and I don't want to go to Yerushalayim, I send them the shliach to Yerushalayim, shluch shalom kamoso, and then the shliach before getting there he dies, and then I said forget about it. The shliach didn't take it. I go and I take it from the shliach's hands and I bring it to Yerushalayim. Yosef Chanina teaches a halacha. It says v'lakachta, right? You should bring it, and v'hevesa is not actually said in the Torah. V'hevesa is the overall concept of bringing it. So the reason here is the word lakicha, even though instead of the word v'hava, it has to be a lakicha and hava be'echad. It has to be someone who plucks the fruits, the owner, and the person who brought it together. If you send the shliach, then you can't bring the shliach can say bikur, could bring the bikurim and say the parsha, but once he goes, you can't go take it from him, and he dies. You can't take it from him, and you can't be koreh. So similarly over here, by a woman, right, who's married to a man, and she dies, right. Even though there's no shliach over here, but the man, it should be like the case where it belonged to the woman, and now it belongs to the man, and he shouldn't be able to be koreh, kamash malan. No. Yet even though she died, even though it's similar to the case of a shliach, it's not exactly the same as a shliach, because there's only one person. It was always a kinyan peros for the Baal, and therefore he's able to maybe be koreh by the bikurim in the field of his wife, real truly. He has the kinyan peros on while he's married there. That's the conclusion of today's shir. We'll talk more about Machlokas, Rabbi Yochanan, and Rish Lakish tomorrow's shir, and finish the fourth parak. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I discuss a very fundamental Machlokas over here within Rabbah and Rav Elazar about whether we say that if a non-Jewish person buys land in Eretz Yisrael, does he have a kinyan in the land of Eretz Yisrael to mafkiyam de Shumas Yisrael? Basically, this is an important question for Hilchos Shvius also. We just had Shemitah last year here in Israel. So Shemitah, basically, let's say there's a heter mechira they talk about, selling your field to a non-Jew. If you sell your field to a non-Jew in Eretz Yisrael, so then it belongs to the non-Jew. And just like Shuvas and Ma'isos don't apply, so Shemitah doesn't apply. You can actually, non-Jew could work the field. You can benefit from the produce. A lot of people benefit. Machol and Nachri is a big machlokas. You go to the supermarkets over here, and a lot of the produce, some is chul, comes from chutz la'aretz, which for sure is no Shemitah. And some, it says, the produce is machol and Nachri. It's a big machlokas on the poskim over here, whether you can rely on that. A lot of Rabbanim say that you have to, we know a Hilchos Shemitah, because like Rabbah says, right, a non-Jew could never really own Eretz Yisrael. It always belongs to the Jews. He might be able to make boros, shichin, umaros, like Rabbah says, but he doesn't own the land, and therefore it's chayim and Shemitah. I'll talk about that in the face of Machlokas, Rabbah, and Rav Elazar, Enoch Ben Sion, coming up next.